Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Jordan, and I'm with the Rochester City School District. I'm the Director of Youth Engagement. Today's monthly MBK Fatherhood Engagement event is titled Real Talk with the Docs, which will focus on the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccination. Today's event will start with a presentation from Dr. Velez D. Brown, our Deputy Commissioner of the Monroe County Department of Health. Dr. Velez D. Brown was born into Puerto Rican family in Philadelphia. Dr. Velez D. Brown obtained her bachelor's degree in biology from Swarthmore College prior to working in a laboratory at the University of Pennsylvania. She pursued her medical degree at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. After completing a family medicine internship in Wilmington, Delaware, she entered the University of Rochester Preventive Medicine and Public Health Residency Program. She graduated her residency with a Master's of Public Health in June of 2016. She now serves as the Deputy Commissioner of the Monroe County Health Department, and we're so happy to have her. We also have with us Dr. Clark, who will be supporting this event and discussion. And I don't see Dr. Clark on, but I'm gonna just tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Linda Clark started her. Are you here? Oh, there you go. Hey, Dr. Clark. Didn't see you. Trying to keep my script intact. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about Dr. Clark. She earned her medical degree from the University of Virginia, her master's degree from and I may not pronounce this good, epidemiology. Yes, thank you, Dr. Clark, from SUNY Buffalo, and her bachelor's degree in biology from Brown University. She's board certified in occupational medicine and general preventive medicine at public health. And the public health, I'm sorry, Dr. Clark provides strategic.
You don't need to read all that.
You gotta read that. Our community needs to know who we got. Okay. We got the best. So they need to know that. And there is some young lady, Dr. Clark, that may need to know what you are and who you are so they could become the next Dr. Clark. So it's important. Okay. And you have earned the right to be introduced properly. So I'm going to finish with your permission, Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark provides strategic counsel to Common Grounds Health Initiatives from the medical perspective. This role further advances her keen focus on issues related to health, equity, population, and population health. And at this time, one of my fellow Fatherhood Engagement team members, Ray Myalise, will introduce our community leaders.
So we have two community leaders here joining us this evening. First, ladies first, our CEO of Ibero, American Action League, Angie Perez Delgado, also representing La Cumbre. We also have Elder Hanif Abdul Wahid here with us as well, who is the Community Liaison Workforce Development for the County of Monroe. And I want to thank both of these community members, community leaders, for joining us this evening for a great discussion on this COVID-19 vaccination. Thank you, Brother Hanif, and thank you, Angie Perez Delgado, for joining us this evening.
Ray, I just have to announce to the community, possibly haven't heard it yet, but I've been retired since November. So right now I'm sort of full-time with the BAG representing our interests in the community. And I'm so honored to be with you all here tonight.
Yeah,
thank you. Congratulations on your retirement, sir.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Elder Hanif. We always appreciate your service and time. And our final panelist and guest tonight is the wonderful Miss Tatiana Spencer. She is a senior at the World of Inquiry School of Rochester City School District. She is currently applying to many colleges, and I think she has a couple of acceptance. She's gonna have a couple of choices. She's the former president of our Student Leadership Congress. She now is the current vice president. And I just wanna thank her for all she does in our community on youth leadership. And she is also interested in the medical profession. So she is in the right place tonight. Thank you, Tatiana, for your participation. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Dr. Velez D. Brown, and we'll start our presentation. And at the end of the presentation, there'll be opportunities through the chat for questions with the docs, and certainly we want to be here to answer any questions so that you can be fully informed. Take it away, Doc.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the chance to come and just share some information about COVID-19 and about this vaccine, that the vaccines that are available. Just to be very clear, I'm going to share with you what we know today. Information is constantly changing. And I'm not sure if the organizers have allowed the chat function, but if folks can submit their questions in a particular way, then we will be happy to address those at the end. I do want to just make it clear that it is completely and totally normal and kind of expected for folks to have some doubts and to be skeptical about the vaccine for a number of reasons. 2020 was completely a year of uncertainty and so much misinformation, and it's especially a normal response for populations that have suffered centuries of discrimination, historical trauma, and let's be honest, some flat out abuses by medical centers and the scientific studies. So the information I'm going to share with you all today is really just to try to empower folks to make the most informed decision they can for themselves about accepting this vaccine based on facts, based on science, and not just fear or misinformation. So it is completely normal and okay to have questions, and that's why we're here tonight to try to answer them. So if we move on to the next slide, just some basics about COVID-19, the illness. So this is a new disease. It was first identified in the year 2019. That's why they gave it the name. It's not because there's been 18 other kinds of COVID disease. The disease is caused by a virus that's shown on the picture on the left. That's a 3D model of the virus. It's called SARS-CoV-2. And this virus is a new strain of a family of this type of germ called coronaviruses. Now, this virus used to previously only infect animals. But through random mutation, this virus gained the ability to infect human beings. So it jumped from just affecting animals to now also affecting humans. And since this virus was completely new for human beings, there was no person on the face of the whole planet who had any kind of previous protection against this infection. And so that's why it has caused a pandemic. That's why it has spread so quickly over the entire world. And that's why it's causing so much illness and death wherever it shows up. Now, this COVID infection, it's spread by what we call respiratory particles. So it's transmitted through saliva or nasal secretion. So whenever we talk or sing, when you sneeze or cough, we release these tiny microscopic drops from our noses and our mouths. And if someone is infected with COVID-19 or with the coronavirus, it's possible that they could infect other people through spreading these respiratory droplets, even before they themselves know that they've been infected. And so that's why it's so important that we all wear a mask that covers both your nose and your mouth whenever you're closer than 6 feet to someone who doesn't live in your same household. Now, the symptoms of COVID-19 are what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. It can be any of the following: chills, cough, loss of sense of taste or smell. That particular symptom, the loss of being able to smell or taste things, that's really specific to COVID-19. There's not a whole lot of other illnesses that tend to cause that specific symptom. But COVID can also cause congestion, stuffy nose, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue or tiredness, pain in all kinds of places in your body, in your muscles, in your joints, headaches, stomach pain, sore throat, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. Now, symptoms can show up anywhere between 2 and 14 days after someone has been exposed to the virus. And it's important for folks to understand you don't need to have all this whole long list of symptoms. You don't even have to have more than one of these symptoms to have COVID. In making lots of the contact tracing calls that our Department of Public Health does, we've spoken to COVID positive people who only had one symptom, and maybe it was really mild, and maybe it only lasted for a short time. So I've gotten into the habit now, after months of having these conversations, of telling people, look, if you feel different at all from your normal self, just go get tested. Just in case, go get tested. because COVID-19 can look different in different people's bodies. It manifests itself and causes different symptoms from each individual. Next slide. So now let's shift to thinking about how the COVID vaccine works. So if you start on the left-hand side of your screen, under where it says mRNA vaccine, the vaccine, it contains a small, harmless piece of what we call messenger RNA of the SARS-CoV virus. And it's surrounded by this protective lipid envelope. Basically, it's a little ball of grease that surrounds a tiny chunk of the virus's genetic material. Now that RNA that's contained in the virus, it's not the whole genome. So if you start on the left-hand side, that little circle, you see there's a little just piece of that viral genetic material that gets put into the vaccine, and it only contains the genetic instructions to make this one protein. What you see circled in black, it's the spike protein. It's just a protein that sits on the surface of the virus. So once those little envelopes full of a tiny piece of mRNA are injected into the host, then the host cell and the vaccine can kind of merge together, because all of our cells are made of lipids as well, cholesterols and things like that. So that's how the mRNA gets into the cell. And then it uses the normal process of the body to take that mRNA, that genetic material, and translate it into that spike protein. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you see those little black parts that are kind of coming out of that host cell. And so the immune system of the person that gets vaccinated recognizes those proteins as foreign, and that turns on the immune response against that spike protein. So this process takes about 2 weeks to happen when you're first exposed to any germ that you haven't ever seen before. And so this is the way that the vaccine can teach your body, this is what COVID-19 looks like. And so you can be prepared to fight that infection. And then if you ever see the SARS-CoV virus out in the real world, well, then your body has already done most of the work. And because we create what are called memory cells, they can start to produce those little green Y-shaped proteins called antibodies. And that can happen in 2 or 3 days instead of taking 2 weeks, because your body has already learned how to fight against COVID-19. And so one important note that I want to make sure everyone recognizes, if you want to go back, the vaccine is missing the majority of the genetic material for the SARS-CoV virus. So there's no way that this vaccine can actually give you COVID-19 disease, because the body can't produce a whole viral particle if all you did was give it the instructions to make that one tiny surface protein. So the body can't make a virus particle that can multiply, that can infect other cells. It just hasn't received enough information to do that. And so you can think of it like your own host cells are like a factory. And if you think of an example like a car factory that makes cars, the vaccine is like giving that factory only the instructions to make a steering wheel, one little piece of the car. You can't build a whole car if all you have is the instructions to make a steering wheel. There's just no way. And so in the same way, the vaccine can't teach the body how to make a whole virus particle when all it got were the instructions for that one tiny surface protein. And then one other note that I think will hopefully address some folks' fears, the mRNA from the virus, it only ever goes into the outer part of the cell. So if you think of a cell and you think of your DNA, the thing that makes you who you are, that genetic information is very important. And so the body protects it in a part of the cell called the nucleus. And so that's one part of the cell. But the mRNA only ever goes around that nucleus. It never actually goes in. So the mRNA from the vaccine never gets into the same part of the cell where the host DNA is, so they never interact. So no one has to worry that if they accept the vaccine, it's somehow going to change their body's DNA, because the two types of genetic material never interact. So I've been vaccinated, thank God. I got my second dose and I didn't have very many symptoms, and I didn't develop any new mutant superpowers. It would have been great to suddenly be able to fly or be able to see through walls, but there's no need to be concerned that the vaccine is going to interact or change your own DNA, because those two systems are completely separated. Next slide. So it's important for us to be having this conversation because at the national level, when we compare who is most seriously affected by COVID-19, it's not a surprise to anybody probably on this call or this meeting that minority groups are suffering more than the white groups. So if we look at what we call age-adjusted mortality rates, so this is rates of how many people are dying from COVID, every other group you can see on the screen is doing worse than the white population. So my people, the Latinos, you can see we are 3 times more likely to die from COVID than our white counterparts. Same thing for the Black and African American communities. And so, as is pretty common, Indigenous populations are unfortunately carrying the highest burden of death from this illness. Next slide. And when we look at the local data for Monroe County, we see a very similar trend. So these bar graphs show what we call age-adjusted rates of number of COVID cases. So that's how many people got infected with COVID-19 that we know of because they had a positive test. And when we split the data out by race or ethnicity, you can see that the Black population has almost twice as high a rate of age-adjusted cases as the white population, and Latinos are, again, higher than the white population. And that's a little bit strange when you just look at the face of it, because Monroe County's population is 70% white. If everything was equal, 70% of the cases of COVID should be in the white population, but we're seeing higher rates of catching COVID and getting sick from it in minority populations. Next slide. The picture gets a little worse when we look at rates of hospitalizations. So the age-adjusted rate per 100,000 people of different racial ethnic groups that get so sick from COVID that they need to go into the hospital. Here, the Black population is doing 4 times worse than the white population, and Latinos are about 3 times, have a 3 times higher rate of getting so sick from COVID that they need to go into the hospital. And the next slide, thankfully, the deaths are not quite so bad, but when we look at the age-adjusted rate of deaths from COVID, we still see a similar disparity is present. Blacks are dying at a rate about twice as high as whites, and the Latinos aren't quite that high, but we're still higher than our white counterparts. So the summary of these data is that COVID-19 is affecting minority populations in a disproportionately bad way, and that's why it's so important that we take extra efforts to ensure that our own underserved, under-resourced, marginalized population take every advantage of every possible strategy to protect ourselves from this illness. Because statistically speaking, if a Black or a brown person catches COVID, they're much more likely to get seriously sick, end up in the hospital, or die compared to our white friends and neighbors. So that's why it's really important that we're trying to put out this credible information about the vaccine. Next slide. So some basic information about the vaccine. It is completely voluntary. Because these vaccines have been approved with emergency use authorization, it is illegal for any employer or school or any other group to try to mandate that you have to get this vaccine. It is entirely your choice. You can't actually be forced to accept this vaccine as long as it's under this EUA authorization. And so that's why it's kind of discouraging when some of our local leaders of color, plan protests and things like that against the vaccine, because there is no mandate. It's impossible for someone to try to make anybody take it against their will. Both of the 2 vaccines that are available are a 2-dose series. So they're separated by 21 days if you get the Pfizer vaccine or 28 days if you get the Moderna brand. And some folks wonder why you need 2 doses. And so the first dose of the vaccine, it kind of primes your body. It turns on your immune system to get it started protecting you. And then you really need that second dose to really get your immune system to build a strong protection, a protection that will last longer and that gives you a higher percentage of what we call efficacy, the proportion of people who get the vaccine and will actually be protected if they see the virus for COVID out in the real world. Now, these vaccines are only approved for people who are at least 16 years old if the Pfizer or 18 years old for Moderna, but anyone older than that, even our seniors, I think the oldest volunteer in some of the studies that I read to get these approvals was in his 90s. I think it was 94 years old. So all of our seniors are totally eligible to get this vaccine. And it's really, really effective. So the Moderna vaccine is 94% effective. The Pfizer vaccine is 95% effective. And that's a number that gets calculated based off of how many people get the vaccine or get what we call a placebo. So it's an injection that's basically like water. It doesn't have the vaccine. And when you do the math, you can, for example, in the Pfizer study, they only found 8 cases of COVID among people who received the vaccine compared to 162 people who got COVID later on when all they got was the placebo. So it does show that it is a protective. It can prevent folks from getting COVID-19 illness if they ever get exposed to the virus later on. So it's really, really effective. It's effective across different ages, across different racial and ethnic groups, but it is effective to prevent COVID-19 disease. But what we don't know, because these vaccines are too new, is whether someone who has been vaccinated will still be able to, once they're exposed to the virus for COVID-19, if they will be able to transmit it to someone else, even if they themselves don't get sick. So because we don't know if that is the case or not, even after people get vaccinated, they are still going to need to wear their masks and try to social distance from people who don't live in the same household. And certainly all of us should be washing our hands like it's our job, so that we can protect ourselves and protect the people around us as well. Next slide. So of course, the major question nowadays is, where can you get your vaccine? Where can you sign up for a shot? And unfortunately, we're not getting a whole lot of vaccine this week because of weather and I don't know, some other reasons. We haven't actually gotten our allocation anywhere in the Finger Lakes region. But the Finger Lakes COVID-19 Vaccine Hub is a consortium of groups that are working to try to get our community protected as fast as we can. And so they have created this website at www.fl for Finger Lakes vaccinehub.com, and there's a bunch of different links there. This website is translatable into 10 different languages, and if you click where it says getting your vaccine in the bottom kind of left-hand corner, there are a couple of steps it walks people through, and it does take you to a website where you can see where are the links to sign up for a vaccine, and it helps folks determine, are you eligible yet or not? But this information is constantly changing because we never know from week to week how much vaccine we're going to receive. So this is a really good way where folks can go and get information to see if they're eligible and where they can go to try to sign up for an appointment. So I'm going to stop there and welcome your questions and conversations with our other co-presenters.
So I think at this point, we want to have some open dialogue in reference to all the information that was just provided. So for Elder Hanif, Angie, or Tatiana, as you hear this information, what are some questions that you may have, or information that you're hearing out there in the community that you may want additional information on, given the information we just received?
Well, I'd like to say that first, I would like to be clear with the community that this is in no way a presentation that is trying to get you vaccinated. It's a presentation that is trying to get you to educate yourself on the choices that you have to be vaccinated, and that the vaccine is safe. And I think that there's this big label or push in our community that there's extreme hesitancy in the Black and brown communities when it comes to the vaccine. And maybe that is rightfully so, but I think that that is a dangerous thing to say until we get folks in to get vaccinated. And so as the vaccine is taking off and Black and brown people are not taking the vaccine, then we would use data instead of anecdotes saying that our communities don't want the vaccine, because that may be far from the truth. I think a lot of our elders and seniors are trying to get it, and based upon equity and scarcity, um, it's not a smooth rollout. But I think in the next few months, there's supposed to be a hopeful and a robust supply of the vaccine. And then I think at that time, with an educated community, we may see some outcomes that we want. Now, I want to say this as a religious person. I believe in God Almighty. I believe that He is in control of everything, and the way that He has made the creation, He has made it that when it disease itself, there's a cure up under the sun for it. And so regardless if we're thinking that there's natural homeopathies out there, those things are all right. And if you have those, by all means, we should share those. But when it comes to the pandemic, and one of the things of opening the economy back up and older people taking it, and if enough people take the vaccine, there's such thing as a herd
Immunity.
yeah, and the doctors can get into that, the herd immunity. But I really think that we should have these frank discussions with that. And I understand that as medicine availed itself at the turn of the century, it was misused in Black and brown communities, and so I can understand the suspicions. But we're asking folks tonight, kindly do your research, talk about it some more, invite Dr. Brown out to other forums so we can hear this and make our informed decisions.
Thank you, Elder Hanif. Tatiana, I see that you popped up on the screen. Did you have a question or?
Yeah, one of my questions what are some of the side effects of the vaccine?
So, and Linda, feel free to jump in because I've done a lot of talking. But let me just try to shift a little bit how people think about it. So side effects are something we don't expect. So if I have cancer and I get chemotherapy, it is meant to kill the rapidly dividing cells of the cancer in my body. But other cells rapidly divide in your body, like your hair cells, like your stomach cells. So a negative side effect is that people get real nauseous and they lose their hair when they get the chemotherapy. That's not the point of the chemotherapy. The chemotherapy is meant to kill the cancer, but it has this unfortunate negative effect. What a lot of people are calling side effects when you get the vaccine are actually just evidence that your body is working, that it's having an immune response. So I actually have a slide on that. If you want to advance 2 slides, Carlos, please. Folks can have some symptoms that look like COVID-19 after they get the vaccine, but I'm going to be completely transparent thank you. When they did the studies, both for Moderna and Pfizer, less than 10% of all of the 70,000 people that were in the studies just here in the US had any kind of a side effect. But if of the people who did report any kind of an immune response after getting the vaccine, you see the percentages here. So the most common impact, and this really would be a side effect, is pain at the injection site. So we're puncturing the skin, we're injecting a fluid. And so some people will see a little bit of pain, a little bit of redness. My arm personally was pretty sore, and it wasn't even just at the site where I got the shot. This whole like shoulder deltoid muscle was sore. Typically, some folks are finding that they have more immune reactions after their second dose than their first. So that was the case for me as well. I did have some of that fatigue. I had some body aches the next day after my second dose, but it only really lasted a day. And my arm actually hurt less after the second dose than the first, which I thought was kind of weird. But it wasn't anything that made me need to go to the doctors. It certainly is definitely better than some of the more serious cases of COVID that we've seen. And for me, having one day of body aches and fatigue was far, far better than me taking the risk of possibly making a loved one sick. So I'm a doctor, I see patients. I was getting tired of being afraid of my patients, of that kid that comes in with a snotty nose because they have a cold and thinking, oh my goodness, is it going to be COVID? Is my mask going to slip? Are they going to not wear their mask properly? And I didn't want to have that fear anymore. And of course, I'm still wearing my mask and I'm still taking all of the precautions, but those side effects, even if you get those immune reactions, even if you get them, it's far better than to get actual COVID and put yourself and your family at risk.
We have
Thank
one
you.
question in the chat. How long does the vaccine last in one system?
We don't know. So I think it's a good bet that it may be one of the vaccines that needs to be boosted. And once again, we're not sure how often. But, you know, just like with the flu, these viruses change, as we've seen with some of the mutant strains and whatnot. So our attack may have to change a little bit over time as well. So it's nice to say, oh, I can't wait to get Johnson & Johnson one and done. I think it's probably going to require some future boosts.
But we just don't know. It's too new.
I have another question. When is a estimated time of how long until the vaccine is mass produced?
It's being mass produced now. Just not as fast as we want it, right?
Yeah. Like be able to get to more of the normal, instead of being, cashiers and doctors, more of just the normal citizen.
Probably I'm thinking the summer, but I think, what's an interesting question is the worldwide view, and maybe, Madi can jump in, because we're quite privileged here in our country. We are very fortunate, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes with how slow it seems to be going. But there's some third world, and I hate to use that term even, but there are some poorer countries who are scrambling to get vaccine that has not been studied as well. That is less expensive. We are very blessed here. Like I said, it's all in perspective. So for our country, I think we have a great, and I'm just going to copy Joe Biden, but I do believe by next Christmas, we're going to be in a better spot. We at the Black Physicians Network, we've already decided we're not going to do our gala in September because it still feels like it may not yet be a time that we can all congregate, even if a lot of us have access to the vaccine by then. But I think your question is very good.
And the reality is that any of these pharmaceutical companies that is producing the vaccine, it's producing vaccine for the entire planet. No human being in the history of humanity had ever had to fight the SARS-CoV-2 infection. And so that's why, every country is trying to buy up as many doses as they can. And unfortunately, capitalism being what it is, a lot of countries are being left out. And so there are lots of countries that haven't had a single dose of the vaccine, even though their people are dying, even though they're getting COVID. So we're fortunate to have ultra cold freezers that can store vaccines like the Pfizer. But as soon as the vaccine goes into any county, we are getting it out that same week. Those are the mandates that are coming from the State Department of Health, from the governor's office. And we can argue about a lot of ways that this vaccine has rolled out, but the urgency is not lost on any of us, because we are getting it out as quickly as we can get it in.
Yeah, quick question for either one of you or for both of you. Tatiana and I are a part of the Student Leadership Congress, and the students asked when, if ever, will the students be able to be vaccinated?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marty.
You want me to do? Okay, fine. children, even very mature children who are about to go off to college, typically are excluded from any kind of clinical trials initially, because we want to prove that a medication, a device, a vaccine is safe and effective in a regular adult population first. So the studies are happening now for children to get both the Pfizer and the Moderna. I think Moderna is down to like age 12.
Yeah.
And so until those studies are done, they're not going to approve the vaccine for anyone younger than either 16 for Pfizer or 18 for Moderna. And that's really not because I think they're unsafe. I think we just need to get a critical number of people who are willing to enroll their children in these experimental trials to show that it works and that it's safe and that it's not going to hurt people. And after they do the studies of kids down to 12, eventually they'll start to do it for younger and younger kids. But I believe I saw two sources. I think it was for the Moderna. One of them said that they're hoping to complete their trial for down to age 12 by this summer. And then there was a different report that said we might not see that data until January 2022. So who knows? That's 6 months different from these two different sources. But those studies are happening now because we do want to protect our young people. But thankfully, children seem to get less severe cases of COVID. And so that's why the focus now is really to just get the vaccine out to our elders and to people who have chronic illnesses that set them up at risk of having a really bad outcome if they get COVID.
Okay.
It's coming, just not as fast as we'd like.
Yeah, because the students want to return to school. They're
Go to school, see their friends, have a birthday party for crying out loud.
Right.
That's not on a screen, but it's just not safe to do that yet. I'm so sorry.
One other question, and then maybe I'll pass it. I don't know if Angie has a question, but Angie, if you have one, you can go next. Another question that I got today when I was discussing the fact that we were doing this for the community, and I don't know if the person was able to get on, was they felt like, okay, Tony, you're telling me there's no conspiracy, no experiments done on Black and brown people. Is there a difference in where they're doing the vaccination? So like, do people in certain communities get Pfizer versus Moderna? And is there some system, because people are still looking for that conspiracy in all of this? And once again, Elder Hanif outlined that why, the historic perspective. So is there any difference in who gets what? Are they sending Pfizer to, suburban areas? Are they sending Moderna to? Can you guys just talk about that a little bit?
Before Mari goes off, I really have to talk about some of the racist theories that are out there about these vaccines. I have to say, I was just personally insulted when people talk about Moderna as a ghetto vaccine. Mm-hmm. And I think they did it because there was a Black woman who was instrumental in developing that vaccine. And frankly, when I got my Moderna, I was extremely pleased and proud of my sister for being involved in the studies. And when you say experiment on Black people, I just wanted to clarify a little bit, because one of the things that's been fairly exciting about these studies that have been done in this with these vaccines is the penetration, is the amount of Black and Latino people who have been involved in the studies. That's almost, kind of a success story for this vaccine. So I think we can be, very happy and proud that we were participants in studying the safety of this vaccine. And my last point before I hand it over to Madi is that race is not a biological thing, okay? When somebody takes a scraping, or somebody takes some of the cells from my cheek and puts it under a microscope, it doesn't look any different from Madi's, it doesn't look any different from a white person's. And I think, we have to understand our thinking around race and ethnicity it is still flawed. It's been embedded in us for centuries, and we understand there are other reasons that we see racial and ethnic difference in outcomes, but it's not our biology that is causing that. So I'll just put that out there, and then I'll I'll give it to, looks like she's over here on my screen.
Listen, may I add to that, Dr. Clark, also too, the diversity in terms of the scientists that have studied this for maybe 10 going on 15 years now, and have put this vaccine together. It's not the same scientific community where we did have the harshness years ago. That community did, in fact, possibly use Black folks and indigenous folks as guinea pigs in terms of their discoveries and everything else like that. Some of the most cruel things happen in slavery. So we understand that. But stop thinking that science, you understand, is germane to white folks and white people. This is a diverse community now. A Black person helped get Moderna to be where it is today. And we have scientists of all people around the world. Some are Christian, some are Muslim, some are Hindu. So I think that when we're saying these things, and we're getting upset and we're spelling these notions of the brutal yesterday past, yeah, I agree with you. I think the scientific community was racist. I thought that if there was some risk in something, yes, they would try it on us first or anything else like that. But within this vaccine, there's a community of very outstanding doctors. And listen, I think I would have to trust Dr. Brown and Dr. Clark. For me, what is the harm in them saying that, hey, there's something out here that is going to impact Black and brown people at such a rate, you understand, that I'm not with it, because science doesn't lie. Now, the person that is trying to advance the science and hasn't gone through all of the processes, all of the studies, and all of the tests and stuff like that, sure, then we should have some questions about it.
Yes.
But in terms of this right here, so many people have worked on this, and this is not white people working on it. It is scientists. Scientists. Science is facts. It's the thing that is produced up under the sun. And so we really have to, I believe, grow up a little bit more in terms of that, and just do our research and things like that. And I'm not asking anybody to discount what happened in the past, because those things were there. And I recite those things a lot of times when I'm having these conversations. But the white man is not producing this vaccine. Scientists are.
Thank you all.
And let's just say her name, Kizzmekia Corbett is the PhD scientist who helped with the Moderna. And so it's amazing, and it's quite an achievement that our own people are contributing to these advances in medicine, in science. And I'm really tired of mostly my white patients getting to take advantage of that benefit. The horrible racist past and the trauma is real, but we cannot let that keep impacting us today by not taking advantage of what is rightfully ours. The federal government, scratch that, all of us with our tax dollars have paid for these vaccines. It is 100% free to anybody who goes to get it. You better go get yours. I got mine as quick as my name came up on the list, because I want to be protected. I care about my family. I care about my community. And the science, it feels like it came out very quickly. I can happy to go into how a lot of the systems were aligned in such a way that the vaccine could come out as quickly as it did. But as Elder mentioned, scientists have been working on mRNA vaccines for 20 years. Maybe it started out in cancer and we were trying to find a vaccine for rabies and MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. But as soon as the scientific community realized how devastating this COVID-19 disease has been, of course, they all pivoted, they aligned, they shared the genetic sequence. As soon as it was made available, as soon as it was discovered, it was made available to every scientist in the whole world so that we could all work together to get ourselves out of this mess. But we're never going to get out of this mess if everyday people don't take advantage of what is rightfully ours.
Thank you. Thank you. Science, not race. So folks who keep asking those questions, go to credible leaders and doctors in our community like we have here tonight. So Angie, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that, initially Ibero, we did a lot of that. We pulled credible messengers that shared this information in Spanish language for that reason, because I think it is important for people to see the diversity, right, in the leadership in our area. If Dr. Mari is a trusted leader in our community and she's getting up in front of, alive and sharing with people, I'm willing to take this vaccine, it can really go a long way with the community. So I think, part of what we focus, so the Latino community, I feel has been severely cut off since this whole pandemic began. I think, it started with access to information. Just from the beginning when COVID happened, information was just not flowing to the community. I was bombarded by emails and complaints and all kinds of things from the communities. I'm sure Mari and many others who are deeply integrated in the Latino community, people know us. So they text us, they write us on Facebook. They'll show up at our house if they know where we live just to say, hey, what's going on? And that has continued. That continued through testing. It is now we're seeing it replay with the vaccine distribution. So that's why early in the game, we said we have to educate our people because we're already behind. We're already behind. And I'm with Mari, and I don't mean this in any way, but let me tell you, Caucasian people are paying top dollar at times. If you let them, they will pay top dollar to skip lines, to go. I've heard of medical vacations in other states. I've heard of all kinds of things. It's good. If they're running for it, we need to stand in line and get our vaccine as well. But I'm a strong believer, just like Elder mentioned, that people need to get to that place on their own. And the only way they're going to get there is by having education. Yes. So if people in the community are not educated, I remember the first time somebody said to me, why Moderna? Is that the ghetto vaccine? And I'm like, where do you guys get that? But if there's no one to counter that message that people trust, let me tell you, that will be out there like wildflower and everybody will be believing it with no science behind it, no legitimate reason. So I think it's so important that we're constantly in tune with what people are saying. I think that we heard through our town halls that Dr. Mari actually spent a lot of time focusing on was, well, it was made too quick. So I'm gonna wait and see if Dr. Clark grow a third eye, right? Or a third arm. So I'm gonna give it a couple of months. That was something that we had to explain in a lot of detail. Like, this is why it happened fast, right? Like, no steps were skipped. It was just time in between, money, this was completely funded by the government. And, money makes a lot of things happen really fast. Right. But you had a chunk of the population that I think we're seeing now. I think these are the people who called Ibero like crazy today because they already had a cousin, an aunt, and an uncle that did it a month ago. So now they're ready. They're saying, I'm ready for me. So there's that group of people that were just kind of like, I'm gonna wait and see. I'm not anti-vaccine, but I'm really just gonna watch Dr. Clark and see if she get that third eye, coming out. I've heard that. I've heard people.
I heard it today. Yeah. By credible, intelligent adults, supposedly. Yeah. They were like, Tony, you're going to have an extra leg faster.
Someone said to me, they're sticking a chip in her body. And I said, let me tell you, if the government wanted to put a chip in your body, they could have been done that.
Already there.
When you got your flu shot, they could have been done that. We're all... So let's get past that.
Somebody wants to track this little piece of technology.
Put our phones down. Yeah.
It's in my pocket, it's next to my head, or it is laying on the table next to my bed. They have, if they, whoever this magical they is, wanted to track us, they had different means. But
I try, the myths that come in, we have fun with it and all, but I do have a healthy respect, for people who have questions, and I try to answer them as best I can. But like everybody else has said, it's your choice, but the choice we want you to make is an informed one, and not what you read on the latest internet blog or heard at the store. So we are happy to point you to credible sources, and that the website that Madi put up is actually very good. We're trying very hard to maintain that. The FL Vaccine hub.org is very good at helping walk through the thank you, Carlos, walking through whether you're eligible, is it your turn yet? Yeah. Understanding that everybody's going to get a turn. And, it is funny because we got this balance, like Elder said, there's there's still people who have some hesitancy, but not the huge droves, because we've done our job. We've been out there, we've been educating, and now that we've got people receptive and ready, where's the beef, right? We're still waiting. It's just such an awkward thing because we want the supply to match the demand, and it's not. So, just making sure we consistently give the message that you will get a turn, please be patient. There is no conspiracy. We're waiting for the supply to flow.
And Dr. Clark, I think that's important about the hesitancy, because yes, there is hesitancy, and we need to figure out how to educate those folks and hopefully provide them enough information. But there's also willingness. And I think when the conversation is strictly focused on hesitancy, it blocks the door for access, right? Because it's assuming people don't want it. So I think that's the counter narrative that we've been trying to put out there. Yes, there's a small group of people that don't want it, but then there's this group of people that do. Let's focus on getting them vaccinated, because they're going to be the people that can potentially influence those people that are hesitant. So I love the way Elder said it in the beginning. We have to check that language when they start saying Black and brown people are hesitant. No, we're not. We may just need some education, but there's some that want access, and they should have access, because I think for a while there, at least to me, it felt like even in some of the media, right? It felt like we were being shut off. Well, they don't want it. They don't want it. Yeah, some of that is true, but there's people that do want it. So let's focus on them.
I agree. That's been my on the ground experiences. I mean, we saw people, but I do not come across a lot of people with super strong reactions. Most people are just not quite at that point of readiness. And one thing we still do testing, and let me just put that out there. COVID testing is still a thing, and it's still an important thing. We're seeing a marked decrease in people getting tested, and we will, commercial break, be out testing on Saturday from 10 to 1 at Bull's Head. And we still have our city site. So East High, I do believe, is still testing this Saturday as well. So it is important, but people still don't understand exactly why it's important. Madi alluded to the fact that it may be tied with reopening some things, right? As we go to school, as we go to games and whatnot. But it's not for party planning. And that's what we saw we were out in the snow the day before the Super Bowl, and people, oh yeah, we're all getting tested because we're all getting together. I'm like, no, no. So it is, but it is important.
Dr. Clark, either one. One of the other questions that came out was on a testing note, if I've already had COVID, so this would kind of be that two-part kind of question. I've already had it. Should I, or what's the reason for getting the vaccination? And the two-part question would be, is there risk in me already having COVID? Because there's been people who said you got to wait, there's waiting periods before you would go get vaccinated, all kinds of stuff that's out there that may be confusing to people. So can you talk a little bit about that for a minute?
Sure. So people who've had COVID, unfortunately, can get it again. And, you know, when Madi was talking about, we don't know who can transmit, that's an issue as well. So we're asking people after COVID infection to wait 90 days to get vaccinated, but we encourage people to get vaccinated. Again, I have my sister-in-law works with somebody who's been infected twice. And I think one of the really sad things for my sister-in-law, who also got it because her whole workplace got it, you know, she works in a bank, and this is in South Carolina. And, you know, all my family lives in these unruly states, so I can't go nowhere. But, you know, after that, you know, they've all had prolonged symptoms. She was sick back in, I don't know, May, and she's a sharp finance person, is having trouble with recall and things, you know, so it's so important to get vaccinated to prevent disease, because we don't know what the long-term effects of disease are going to be. So I would not play around with it. Once you've recovered from COVID, you wait your 3 months, and then you go get your vaccine.
And the 3-month wait, it's not because it would hurt you to get it earlier. So if you're eligible, just go get it. Just do it. But we say maybe wait 90 days, because if your immune system is working normally, whether it's COVID, whether it's chicken pox, whether it's a cold, you know, your body should have some protection. We just don't know how long it would last, because COVID is new. We think maybe an average of 3 months. So you would have some protection. And so the thinking was, let's let folks who have no protection get that vaccine first. But as scarce as it is,
any immune confusion too, you know, for people who have the question about how long do I have to wait after vaccination? So I got my Shingrix, you know, the shingles vaccine, which is another arm bruiser, but you know, the recommendation is to wait at least 14 days before starting your next one. And like Madi says, it probably will still work, but you know, maybe not as effectively as if your body is focused on that. So I was 6 weeks before I went and got my my Moderna, and so I still have to get my next Shingrix, y'all. So my arm is really it's been suffering, but I do feel more confident, more protected. I still wear my mask. I still use my hand sanitizer, but I feel a little better about being out, testing for COVID, and going home to my family. I feel just a little better about it. So.
Well, we do have a YouTube question. I know you answered it in the chat, Dr. Clark, but I think it's a good question we can, you know, share with the community. And the question basically was, if I take certain vitamins and eat right and build my immune system up, will that help me prevent myself from getting COVID? Or if I do get it, will that help make my symptoms less? You know, I won't be as affected by COVID-19. And I know you answered it in the chat, but can you all share a little bit about your thoughts around?
Yeah, I'll let Madi do it since I did the answer in the chat. I'll give her a crack at
oh goodness. Let me go check, make sure I don't
contradict. Right, hopefully we don't conflict, right? You know.
No, I mean, it never hurts. It never hurts to be eating right and taking, you know, vitamins. I mean, honestly, the vitamins are best absorbed by your body the way the good Lord put them in healthy food. But sure, taking a supplement probably won't hurt. Don't go overboard. You don't want to overdose on things either. Being healthier will always help you fight off an infection faster. But again, this virus is completely new. Nobody's body knows how to fight this. And we have seen what this illness is doing to our communities, to communities of color, what it's done to our society and the whole world. So I'm always an advocate for a healthy lifestyle, not just for COVID, but to combat the diabetes and the cancer and the high blood pressure that is in my family, that is in my genes. I'm predisposed to all these things. So of course I want to take care of myself, but taking the vaccine is just one more tool that we can use to protect ourselves, to keep give ourselves the best chance at not suffering one of these really negative outcomes, certainly not dying, not giving it to somebody and feeling horrible, like oh my goodness, I made my neighbor who's 97 sick, my grandmother, my family member, my kids, whatever. But it's also important to not only depend on those kinds of food and vitamins, because all of us have gotten the flu, a cold, any other illnesses, despite our best efforts. So there's no shame and there's nothing wrong in taking advantage of the new technology that is available to us now. We should, as much as our community has been impacted, we need to take every chance to protect ourselves and the people around us.
I see Don has popped on the screen. Don, you have a question?
Yes, I got a question from our virtual community. What are the most common myths, and how have they been addressed?
There are a lot of them. So one of the myths was that there's a chip in the vaccine, which is not true. Again, if people wanted to track us, there's an infrastructure to do that. And the vaccine is so fragile, you couldn't put a solid thing like a chip in the vaccine. You'd break all of those little bubbles that I mentioned. So that's not true. Some other folks worry that there are things like thimerosal or mercury in the vaccine. Not true either. Some folks of the Christian faith worry about science that has been developed using fetal tissues that they think are taken from aborted fetuses. That's not the case at all. There were no fetal tissues used in the development of this mRNA technology, and you don't produce this vaccine using any kind of human baby tissues, nothing like that. So there's no need to feel like I either have to hold on to my faith or take advantage of this vaccine. There's no conflict here between those two things. Linda, I know you've done your Mythbusters. What are some of the other interesting ones you've heard?
Oh, there's so many. If you drink something hot, that'll kill the virus, or using a blow dryer. So that will not work. Let's see. We've recently, and this was a new one. I was just telling Marty last night, I hadn't heard this one, that somebody heard that because there's a protein in the placenta that kind of looks like the spike on the coronavirus, that it'll cause you to lose your baby if you get vaccinated, and that is not the case. And somebody kind of equated it to like, just because I have a 7 in my 10-digit phone number doesn't mean I can dial anybody else with a 7. It's really totally unrelated to the spike on this coronavirus. So that was a newer one that I hadn't heard before. I was just looking up the address. I'm going to put the address for our Mythbusters series. We've done, I forgot, I think we're up to like 25 different episodes of Mythbusters, where we try to handle some of the myths that come in all the time. And actually we have I wonder if I can get that. There's a slide we developed at our Common Ground Health where I work, that it's it would be good for a kiosk. You can click on the myth and then up pops the correct answer. But I think one of them, I think we talked about before, some people think it's going to change their DNA, and messenger RNA cannot. I always think of it as like Mission Impossible, right? You get your instructions, right? The cells got their instructions to make this spike, and then it disintegrates. It explodes. So there I don't know, there's so many myths out there, but I'm going to get the website.
There was another one. Some folks were circulating the idea that some of these vaccines were developed and are being targeted to Black and brown communities to do them harm, to kill them off. Not true. COVID's doing that plenty well enough, in addition to poverty and lack of education and social determinants of housing and jobs, and there's plenty of things that are doing that to us already. This vaccine is not one of them.
Yeah, but I think the real thing here to react to is that we never have the conversation, or there was never a thorough investigation of where the virus came from, how it started, how it mutated, and everything else like that. And that's where most of the conspiracies come from, because we know that in laboratories, people are working with germs, they're working with viruses to understand those things. Some people might have uh, nefarious intent. Who knows? I'm not casting a blame on any government or anything else like that. I don't want to blame the Chinese or anything, but I think that when these things come out, what makes folks sort of lean to that is the population trying to be controlled here. We've gotten something that automatically knocks off the population of people. China has in their laws that you can only have one child. So I mean, once you start putting those things into a gumbo and people eat them, then that's where you're at. Now, the cure, uh, without a doubt, that's what we're focusing on. And I think this is where we have to keep putting the science before the people, to let them know that these some of the myths or some of the concerns that you have around a vaccine. You're making the vaccine sound like we're producing the virus. No, we're producing the cure. And that cure is produced by science, by scientists. They're from all different colors, backgrounds, educations, and everything else like that. This is not a white man in a nefarious laboratory putting things together. And I believe this is how we have to talk to our community, because this is all of the latent things that are in the hesitancy. You know, you have these things. It's all right to have discussions. We can have debate, but when it comes down to science, we have to understand that as a people, science is the thing that has advanced us the last couple of 100 years. And as an example, maybe 150 years ago, a doctor or a physician took care of everything with you, right? Now all medicine is specialized. You got somebody who's going to look at your eyes, your teeth, your feet, your bones, your internal organs. It advances each and every day, and we don't reject that when we need it in an emergency type of way. I don't see anyone that gets shot by a bullet said, no, don't take me to the hospital, because they don't save you, you know? So the thing is that I believe as a community, we have to be a little bit more intelligent. And the leaders that are in this community, they should at least say, in terms of this vaccine, is stop putting out all the dispersions with it and talk intelligently about this thing. And then I understand that young people are not going to take this vaccine. You know, some of them just might not do it, right? But a lot will, you understand, if we see the results of it. And the results is that when the pandemic came out, the disparities of folks getting infected and dying was Black and brown people. So if there's a way to save Black and brown people, then you need to come up with that. But if it's not, a vaccine has been discussed as the major option, that if we can get this thing up under control again, we have a healthy society again, we can get back to work again, we can take care of our families, we can see each other. And that's the conversation that I think that our community needs to have.
Yeah. And I would like to build on one thing you mentioned, Brother Hanif. You know, this vaccine, yes, it's new, it's technology, but it's really just helping your body do its job better. It's not going to fight COVID for you. It uses your normal immune system, which every day is fighting off all of these germs that you see all the time. It's just teaching your body how to fight COVID before you actually see the live virus. So it's not some completely foreign external thing. It's just optimizing your own system to protect you.
And another thing I'd like to build on is back to our racist ways, about the attack on Chinese people. Now I don't see that as much here, But to hear about the attacks on elderly Chinese Americans is abhorrent. And the fact of the matter is, this virus is acting like viruses do. It's just a smart virus. It learns, it changes. And that is how it has jumped from an animal species to human species. This is how it's trying to fight what we're doing now. It's just being a virus. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And I thought it was terrible that, we had leaders talking about, this being this Chinese disease, stop. We need to stop and understand this is the virus at work trying to optimize and live. And so we're at war against it and not a people.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we invite the community, if they're hearing this, folks have tuned in or what have you, let us have intelligent conversations on the vaccine in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to have this discussion or whatever, just get in touch with the organizers of this and invite folks out. The bag and Lacrumbe, we believe very strongly that equity is what our voice is. We're not trying to convince anybody to take the vaccine, but we want it equitable in terms of when it comes to us. If the vials come in, we should have some dibs on it like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be to where we have to jump over a wall to get it. And so that's what the bag and Lacrumbe's this is where we're functioning, and we're at these tables demanding that. We have put in some proposals to where we think this can be distributed a little smoother, more intelligently, and basically through our hands and influence. And we're hoping that the community can react to that, and that they will allow us to work on their best half. But we're going to keep our ears out in the community to see just what is happening. And we'd be glad to go anywhere. I know, I guess I could speak for Angie. We'd be happy to go anywhere and have these discussions right here. As long as we can have these discussions to where that they're honest. We're not going to get into a debate with anybody. If you feel as though that you don't want the vaccine, fine, but we do not want it to be a representation that Black and brown communities said that they don't want the virus, because that's not the case.
Vaccine.
Vaccine.
The vaccine.
I agree. And
But they don't want the virus either.
Right.
But they don't want the vaccine.
And I think that brings to mind that we got to figure out who our trusted sources are.
Right.
Okay. We talk about this all the time. There's some places, there's some websites you can go. You can go to the CDC. You can go to the New York State Department of Health. There are also some organizations you can go to. You can go to the Black Physicians Network. You can go to the Rochester Black Nurses Association. The Black Physicians Network has written some statements, to help the community understand about the safety of the vaccine. They've read the studies, they've talked to the experts, and they've issued this technical advisory. So they're definitely trusted sources. And if you're confused about who those trusted sources are, call Marty, call me, call Angie, call Elder Hanif. So, but just, don't just pick up the phone and start spreading that misinformation.
Yeah. So I have a question from the chat for the docs or for our community leaders, and our student leader would like to ask another question of the docs, or perhaps maybe the leaders. Go ahead, Tatiana.
A lot of discussion has been going around about the new strand or variant of the COVID. So a couple of people were wondering, does the vaccine still work for that strand, or how dangerous is it compared to the old version?
Yeah, no, those are very, very common questions. So the new strain is just some SARS-CoV-2 virus that again, had some mutation, because viruses just do that. They're not as sophisticated as we are, so it's much easier for their genetic material to get a little change here, a little change there. But honestly, most of those mutations don't actually help the virus. Most of them hurt them. But in this case, we have some variants. We don't know if the current vaccines are effective against this new strain of the virus. I am hopeful that it will be, and this is just my personal opinion, not the Department of Public Health, not Mike Mendoza, not Adam Bello, nothing. This is me as a physician having studied immunology. Because these vaccines are against the spike protein, and the spike protein is so important for the virus to be able to grab onto and hold onto mammalian cells so that it can infect them, the virus can't mutate that too much, because then it won't be able to hold on and transmit and infect. So I'm hopeful that these current vaccines will protect against the new strains, but those studies are ongoing. We don't have any published data about whether that is true or not, but I am hopeful, in my personal opinion, that it will be. Even if it ends up that they do the studies and darn it, these vaccines don't protect against the new strain, hundreds of thousands of people are getting sick and dying from the old strain. So if I can have 94, 95% protection from against the old strain, which we know is here, I'm going to take that, because that is one less thing that I need to worry about infecting me, infecting people I love. If I need to get another vaccine against a different variant strain, so be it. But we just don't actually know for sure if it protects against the new strain, unfortunately. But those studies are happening right now. All of these companies are trying to check. But again, if you're going to do science and you're going to do it well, you can't skip any steps. So a lot of folks are worried, like, this vaccine came out so quick and just a couple months. They didn't skip any of the phases of the clinical trials. They had to present their data to every pharmaceutical company had to present their data to the FDA, where a whole independent panel of scientists, experts, looked at the data, and then the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They had a whole different panel of scientists, experts, physicians, immunologists, virologists, ethicists, who evaluated the information again. And then here in the state of New York, the State Department of Health set up another panel of super smart, intelligent people to review the data to make sure it was safe to give out to us. The head of that clinical task force here in New York State, he won the Nobel Prize in Medicine last year. Like, these are really, really smart, intelligent people who were reviewing the data to make sure it was safe. The reason it happened so quick is because this is a huge pandemic global problem, and everybody recognized that it needed to be taken care of. And so the government threw money behind it. All of the agencies got together, and as soon as that data was available, they looked at it. It didn't sit on somebody's desk and wait weeks and weeks and weeks. It was everyone's top priority. So I got off on a tangent, but I hope I answered your question. I apologize.
Yeah. Tati, is that good? Is that good? Are you good?
Yeah, that's good.
So we have a question in the chat, but I guess I just want to echo what I heard. We have had great science, not great politics or political influence. We had great science that made this happen. The question from the chat is, what happens if you get the vaccine and unknowingly have the virus? Should you get tested before going to take the virus? And maybe a part two to that question is, if someone had COVID and gets the vaccine, I think we kind of answered it earlier, but I think someone still would like to know, right, does this serve as a booster by getting the vaccination? Will I have even higher level of resistance to getting COVID-19 if I've had COVID, get the vaccination? Now am I like doubly covered? So those are the two questions. Thank you.
Right. So I think Madi answered this in the chat. But if you already have COVID, it's not going to hurt you to get the vaccine, as she mentioned before. And we would encourage you to get the vaccine after having COVID. And like Madi said, it's very important to understand that the vaccine acts the same way your body does in order to learn how to fight off this type of virus. So it really is just further instruction. further reminding, further boosting. So it's not going to hurt you. And no, it's not necessary to get tested beforehand. But what is necessary is that you still follow the same precautions that you followed before you got sick, before you got the vaccine. Some people are like, I had COVID, I'm good. No, you still need to wear your mask, you still need to sanitize, you still need to practice distancing, because you might have the ability to infect somebody else. And you also might have the ability to get infected again, especially if you haven't had the vaccine. So.
Yeah, thank you. I will just say this because I've heard this myth too, that you can't get it twice. Please nod your heads. You can't get it twice.
Unfortunately, people have gotten it twice. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I know
early on, there's a lot of, our knowledge continues to change with this. Very early on, we did think that you couldn't get it a second time. But very early on, the myth was that Black people didn't get the disease at the rate that white people. So our experience has taught us otherwise over time.
And even if you couldn't have gotten it a second time, we have new strains, we have different variants.
Right.
So we don't, I hope that it will protect, but we just don't know. You may be able to get the first COVID and then this B117 something or other variant. And so we all need to just be smart, be careful, take care of ourselves, take care of our loved ones in our community.
Yeah. So I want to just say to, everybody in the community who's paying attention and watching this session, please feel free to ask questions. We are running out of time with our docs. We appreciate them. So I just want to let you know, if you're thinking about asking a question, now's the time. Don't let your question go unanswered when you have credible leaders from our community. I do see you, Ms. Khadija Muhammad. She's our director of parent engagement, and I think she may have a question. There's a quick question, and it's not a quick question to the docs, but it's a really good question. And I know you've kind of saw it and answered it, but just for our community, they're asking, like, how do we reach folks with language barriers? How do we reach our hearing impaired or deaf community in this pandemic so that they have all this great information?
So I would just like to comment, people have heard about this whole vaccine hub. We see Dr. Bennett, we see Wade Norwood every week on the television. And, Wade Norwood's side of the house, the Common Ground Health side of the house, is all around this whole trust building. And then the other side of the house is, how do we distribute the vaccine? And so they're charged with some of the equity issues that we're discussing. So, part of, and we're all working together, but, one of the things that we're trying to do is to look at all those different populations. How are we helping people who are elderly and blind was a question that came up today. How about immigrants? How about migrant workers? How about I meant refugees. How about we talked about language access, and it's not just Spanish. It's the sign language. It's the East African languages. So there are a lot of different people that we have to pay attention to. And I wanted to comment on, I know the state is creating a equity plan at the same time that the hub is creating an equity plan in our usual fashion in New York. Anyways, hopefully we'll get it all together. But both sides of the house have considered that, those very questions. And one thing that New York State has in their equity plan, which is probably a little further along than the local one, because they had a jump start, was that at all their sites, they're putting up, papers that, let you point to say which language you speak, and having video interpretation for not only the spoken language, but the visual languages as well. And even that has some issues because not some people are pre-literate. When you come from a country where your job is staying alive and a war is being fought, you didn't learn all you need to, you wanted to learn about reading and writing. So I think it's a complicated question, but it's one that is important, and we're trying to consider every part of our community so that they can truly have access to the vaccine.
Yeah, I want to add. Go ahead, Angie.
I would add too that I very early recognized that as a community leader, I needed to take responsibility for however much advocacy I can pump out of me. So what I would say to those, I've sent so many emails in the last 9 months. I've had so many meetings. I've given heat to people who I love and respect dearly. I've had to have meetings and say, help me understand, right? So that I can be a credible messenger to my community. So what I would say to those, I've connected with other people. I mean, I've exchanged emails with a lot of other Latino leaders in this community. We figured out how to bring our voices together. At times we've divided and conquer, right? If 50 of us complain, maybe they'll listen, maybe all of us will come together. So I think in those communities, for leaders who are in position, and I don't mean leaders of institutions, you could be a grassroots, street level community organizer. You know who are the people leading this initiative. You can find Wade's email, you can find Nana's email, you can find Adam Bellows' email, the mayor's email, whoever email. Because I also strongly believe that the community has to articulate how they want to be engaged. And there is a huge disconnect. So it's very important that systems are hearing this information from the bottom, because sometimes we make assumptions, I make assumptions that don't necessarily translate well into the community. So my suggestion to that is identify those grassroots organizers and community and start writing letters. It doesn't need to be a long letter. Start advocating for what you believe your community needs. And if you don't know who those people are, that's when you can call an Angie, a Hanif, a Maria Elena, a Linda, and say, you know what, I don't know who to go to. I just know that my neighborhood needs this, or my apartment building. How many phone calls have I gotten where it's, Angie, we're dying in this apartment building, right? The property manager won't help us get access. How, just advocate, speak out, share your frustration. Sometimes just sharing your frustration is critical, but that's, I think, how those communities can best help. Everybody has a community leader. Let's identify them and have them amplify their voices. That's why the BAG and La Cumbre have united, because we figured out early in the game, we all were asking for the same thing. So yes, we may ask for things separately, but at the end of the day, we're going to ask for this together. We're going to come together as a group of respectable leaders in the African-American community and the Latino community and say, this is what we are asking for. This is what we're willing to do to make it happen too. So I think as leaders, I had to take responsibility for my little corner of the world, and whatever little bit of messaging I had a power to push forward. So that to me is critical.
Yeah. And I think what the problem was is early on when it was decided that the vaccine was going to be worked on, and they got it done in record time and everything like that. The planning should been that 3-tier or three-legged stool, the one on education and the other one on distribution. So you see that the education and the distribution is somewhat coming last, and we're having great problems with that. And so what it's going to take, and we hope that it comes out in the stimulus bill, is that money and funding has to be attached to this here. So Khadija Muhammad could get this out in her community. Sure, it's on us, like Angie says, that we should go out and get this done. But there's credible people that you could put on the streets, peer educators, folks that could be responsible for making sure that the distribution sites are set up within the neighborhoods and that equity takes place. More education on the vaccine. And so that's the type of infrastructure that we're going to have to build in the Black and Brown community. And we need everybody on board with that, that realizes that this is going to be an issue for us, because when things are distributed like this here, we're the last to always get it. And so we know why it's like that. Racism is a public health crisis. We see these things, but it's going to take all of us to make sure that the vaccination, education, and distribution in terms of equity is our main focus. And we can't ask somebody to volunteer and do it also either. Folks are going to have to get paid to do these things. We're at the table saying this here, and there's an expectation that that is going to happen. We're going to talk to all of the community-based organizations to get them lined up also too. But every grassroots person that is interested in this here, they hired people to go out and take the census. And there was money for that. So we just believe that we've got a lot of work to do, and it's going to take us as a community to do that. And I'm asking that this group, My Brother's Keeper, stay tuned to that and make sure that you're a platform to where you can keep getting these new messages out also too, because we're all going to have to, once we get off of this Zoom, continue to communicate with each other and try to be allies in this.
Yeah, thank you, Elder Hanif. And I would just say, and now because I'm saying that the brothers who are a part of the, fatherhood engagement through MBK, we're here to support. We appreciate Dr. Clark, who has hung out with us a couple times now, and Dr. Brown for hanging out with us and supporting getting this word out to our community. So if we can be of service, please reach out, because you're right, we have to all work. And what I heard Angie say, I just want to kind of echo that because I loved it. People are always trying to find a way to make a difference and do something to help. And sometimes Angie mentioned very simple things. If you've got an elder person in your building, if you can communicate, make a phone call for that person. If you got a small community that you can reach out, there's agencies, if you make 4 or 5 phone calls and you get an answer for someone or a group, you have done a lot, because that group now will not be spreading, and that group will have gotten the help they need. So Angie, that was such great advice, because I know the young people I'm working with always are looking to help. And sometimes simple things like connecting folks to the resource. If you call for a senior and make an appointment, or wherever that may be, a ride to one of the food pickup sites for a family, those things are so important. They sound very small, but Angie, they're big, and you don't have to do giant, grand things, or things that may seem grand, because anything is grand if you're helping our community. I know Khadija Muhammad is on. She said her question was answered. We did get a serious question in the chat, and I know you all are answering them. But in case this is something on other people's mind, the question was, how many people have we lost, fatalities have we had from the vaccination? Can you all just...
Let me say that real loud and clear. No one has died, has been reported as being killed by the COVID vaccine. And there are many, many different systems that are monitoring all of the folks that are getting the vaccine. So any physician, any clinic, any public health entity that gives the vaccine, we are all obligated, or we could lose our license, to report any kind of what's called adverse events. So if somebody faints, if somebody breaks out in hives, has allergies, anything like that, we have to report that. And so the CDC, the federal government, is looking at all of these reports constantly to make sure that we can tell if any sort of kind of side reaction that we didn't see in the clinical trials starts to show up once you give this vaccine, instead of to thousands of people, to millions of people. Nursing homes have their own system where they have to enter any kind of bad outcome for any medication that they give their residents. Hospital systems are working together in consortium. So many people are monitoring this vaccine, and actually all of us individually can contribute to that science. So when we get, Lord willing, when you all get your vaccine, when I got my vaccine, you can text this program and opt in to where the CDC will send you a text message and ask you, how are you doing? Are you having any symptoms? Did you have to go get medical care? Did it make you miss a day of work? And so they're collecting all of this information so that we can keep learning about these vaccines and make sure that they're safe and make sure that they're not causing harm. And so none of the clinical trials, people died of the vaccine. Obviously, if someone's in a clinical trial and they get hit by a car, sure, that person passed away, but it wasn't the medication, it wasn't the vaccine. So no one has died of the vaccine.
Yeah, and I appreciate everyone, and I, you know, as kind of the host, I'm trying to keep eye on the time. We're at 7:36. Someone just stole my chat from our view. There's an event that Dr. Clark wanted us to remind you about, because the docs mentioned testing is still important. Wearing your mask is still important, even if you get vaccinated. We're not sure. We don't have all of the research done. We don't know if you can still transmit. So this Saturday from 10 to 1, no excuse. Jump in your car, go down to Bull's Head Plaza. There'll be testing, no questions asked. I want to maybe leave Elder Hanif with the last word, but I do want to ask one more question. I heard it, and I just want people to hear it again. There is no cost for the vaccination. Is it free 99? Is that?
It's free. So there
might charge an administration fee. The vaccine is free. You know, it is free to everyone. And if you cannot afford the fee, you can get it absolutely free. So
let me just
have insurance. Some people might ask you for it, but it is not required. I know there was some confusion for some people, like, whoa, why are you asking me for my insurance information? And it's not required, but you know, certainly it can go to help defray the costs for the vaccinator. So.
Right. And so that fee is an administration fee. It's not the fee for the vaccine, but it's only charged to someone's insurance. So we all have been paying these premiums. These insurance companies could certainly reimburse the health department or the physician's office or wherever, because we have to pay the person to drop the vaccine, the nurse to administer it, the lights, the everything. But that cost, it is illegal to pass that cost on to the individual consumer. So if you don't have insurance, you are still entitled to the vaccine because we all paid for it with our taxes. If you have insurance, we may bill your insurance company for that administration fee, but that charge is not allowed to come back to you. 100% free, zero cost to the consumer.
Yeah. Once again, I want to thank everyone. And this is the order we'll close. This is the last time.
I'm so sorry. Can I just say one last thing?
Because absolutely, it's also, Dr. Brown.
I'm so sorry. It's just related. So it's also illegal to charge somebody for an appointment. You know, somebody's out there hustling, trying to scam folks. So if your grandma gets a phone call from someone who wants her to pay them to get her an appointment, that is a scam. Nobody is allowed to charge. You can't pay your way to be eligible. You can't pay to reserve your spot. The appointments are limited, but they're free, and the vaccine is 100% free. Sorry, carry on.
And I learned a lot, as always. Dr. Clark, look like you have one last thing you would like to say. Please.
Well, along with that, you don't have to prove your citizenship status. And I know that has been an area of concern for some people. And it's shied them away. Sorry, it's late. I haven't had dinner. Kept them from getting vaccine. That is not a hindrance. You do not have to prove your citizenship.
Correct.
So I just want to say, please light up your cameras for the folks who are on, who have been helping. Mr. Ray Myalise, our brother in MBK, Tatiana, my sister, my strong future leader. We got our brother Don Hunter, who is always on point and asking fantastic questions and pushing us to new heights. Dr. Cotto, we know your camera's broke. We're gonna get Tom and get you some tech.
To put him on blast like that.
It's not because the man is good looking, right? He didn't just break the
Hey, Dr. Clark, he didn't get his haircut. I think he's hiding from that big hairdo he's been sporting. But we thank you, Dr. Cota, for all your leadership on this. And this is the way I'd like to close. From the Fatherhood Engagement team, we appreciate everybody following us. Please share this on Facebook, YouTube, wherever. I want to thank Tom Owen. He is our tech guy, but also our brother and supporter. He likes to be in the background, but he is always leading us in ways that make a huge difference. So I want to close out by giving it to Khadijah to say hello to our district families. If you have a concern or question about returning to school, about the vaccination, about COVID and coming back to the RCSD, please call the Office of Parent Engagement. Khadijah and her team will help you, and we can connect you to these folks who have credible information. So we're going to close out with Khadijah, our sister, Angie. She lets me call her Angie. Sometimes I have so much respect for her. I have a hard time doing that, but if Angie from Ibero and La Cumbre, and then Elder Hanif, you have the last words for the evening. Dr. Clark, Dr. Brown, thank you for your service and continuous service. Khadijah?
Well, I will just keep it really short and say that this was a dynamic event that I feel our parents need to hear, our community definitely needs to hear. It touched me and definitely has changed my perspective on taking the vaccine. So I know if just listening alone for me has changed that thought process, it has cleared up a lot of those myths that have been out there. And like you said, waiting for somebody to grow a horn and everything else. This was definitely a very knowledgeable event. Appreciate you guys being here. I would love to put you guys in front of our parents so that they can get that same information, but definitely we'll be sharing the information. Anybody can call the Office of Parent Engagement if they do want to get in touch with our panel, our panelists that were here, and that number is 585-324-9999. Again, Office of Parent Engagement's number is 585-324-9999, and we will do whatever it is that we can to connect you to our panelists, as well as getting this replayed for our parents, because again, phenomenal information, very much needed. So thank you guys for joining us.
Oh, and I didn't say thank you to did I say thank you to Tatiana? If I didn't, thank you, Tati.
No problem.
Well, thank you for having us. You know, I think events like this are needed, you know, having conversations, you know, via live, via YouTube, you know, reaching as many people as we can. You know, what I will say to the community, if you're having a hard time navigating, if you're in need of support, if there's some language access need, you know, the community knows they can always call on Ibero. Our number is 256-8900. We cannot guarantee any magic, but we will definitely make sure that, you know, we have very powerful people that we're connected to that we can call. So we're always willing to support that level of navigation and advocacy. If there's concerns or anything like that, just make sure that you're communicating. Ibero also did the Spanish language charlas. So those are like our versions of town hall that were fully bilingual with, I think we almost had every Spanish speaking provider in the immediate Rochester area that was kind of leading this effort. So I would encourage folks to navigate to ibero.org and get those resources there if you have families that prefer that information in their native language of Spanish. So just thank you, you know, and anytime you guys need, I'm down, Miguel is down, anybody from the Ibero team, we're always available to you guys. Thank you.
Elder Hanif, close us out. You always have the great words of wisdom. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and I want to thank the organizers of this event for inviting all of us on, and special shout out to Tatiana, our young person who took all of those questions tonight and fearlessly made us hold our feet to the fire. To the esteemed doctors, Dr. Clark and Dr. Brown, I just want to say to the community that science is a very wonderful thing. And without it, we just do not understand God's miracles. And that's what it is. God is not separated from science. He's over the science, or she is over the science. The universe has everything in it to heal us. If it fails us in terms of putting out something that harms us, most certainly there's something up under the sun that can heal us. And I want to say this here is that there's no excuse for us to hold on to past atrocities. And I'm not saying that not to learn from them at all. We should. But we should also understand the time, the circumstances, and the intent when things were done to us medically that impaired us, harmed us, and still has a psychological effect on us. But the COVID vaccine that has been discovered, it's been discovered by some of the most brilliant minds. And those people are from all hues, all colors, all cultures. And I believe that if we have the discussion on the vaccine in terms of its benefits, right? Then you should come up with the science that says that it does not benefit us. And that's what the debate should be about. It shouldn't be about taking century-old atrocities and measuring them up to modern times, because science is the thing that advances us. And so I'm hoping that the community can continue to have this discussion. Don't let anyone put hesitancy on us, saying that Black and brown people don't want the vaccine. That's just not true. We got to have these discussions, and we're hoping that everyone would join in making sure that Black and brown people have the right to get the vaccine and that equity is served in its distribution. Tony, thank you for having me.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Thank you all. Thanks, Tom. Take us out.